Renee Bevilacqua. Stay after me tonight. To my far left, our town council and our finance department to my right. Please join me for the pledge of allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll declare that we have a quorum. 15 are required. I think we made it. Just a quick check for me. Can you all hear me all right? Is it too loud? Not loud enough? We're good? Okay. I'd like to call on Jane Christopher to read the warrant for the meeting.
Greetings. Pursuant to Chapter 3 of Title 45, you are hereby required to post at least 7 days before the 3rd day of May, AD 2016, written notification in 3 or more public places in the town of Foster, Rhode Island, notifying and warning the electors of the town of Foster qualified to vote upon any proposition to impose a tax for the expenditure of money, to assemble in town meeting in the Captain Isaac Payne School Auditorium in the town of Foster on the 3rd day of May 2016 at 7 o'clock in the p.m. for the purpose of ordering a tax to be levied and assessed on the rateable property of the town and the inhabitants thereof, for the payment of the town debts and interest, for the payment of the town's proportion of the state tax, for the support and maintenance of the village, for the building, repairing, and amending of highways, for the building, repairing, and amending of bridges, for the improvement in any manner deemed fit of any property belonging to the town, for all necessary charges and expenses whatsoever arising within the town, whether incidental or not to the above, and for the support of the town's share of the Foster Gloucester Regional School District, for authorizing expenditures of the Capital Reserve Fund, for anticipation notes and bonds, and for any or all other purposes authorized by law, and to transact such other business as may legally come before the meeting. Given under my hand this 21st day of April, AD 2016, at the town of Foster, Rhode Island.
Thank you, Jane. Before we begin the actual part of the meeting, the substantive part of the meeting, I'd like to take just a minute and thank some folks. Boards and committee members in this town who have contributed to this budget, all volunteers. They put in a lot of time to recommend a budget for their given board or committee to the town council. The town council members themselves have spent countless hours preparing this budget, as has finance department and other staff members in the town hall. I'd also like to thank the Payne School custodial staff for setting up the room and doing a fine job getting everything ready for us this evening. And I always do this, and half of them are still outside, but a special thanks is due to the Board of Canvassers who prepares this meeting, as well as the presidential preference primary that you may have just voted at. They put in a lot of work to make sure everything is done properly here. So many thanks. Conduct of the meeting. I read this every year. It hasn't changed. Feel free to ask questions when I'm done. But here's how we do things. To vote, you must be wearing a wristband issued by the Board of Canvassers and be seated in the 2 main sections of the room. Any voters sitting on the heating units will not be counted. A voter who leaves the room during the meeting must surrender their voter affirmation slip to the canvassers and retrieve it upon their return. And I'll remind you that if you need that voter affirmation slip, the little white paper, if we do go to a machine vote for any issue, you'll need to present that little piece of paper to get a ballot. So hang on to that, keep track of where it is. Non-voting members of the audience must be seated in the section to my left. You are reminded not to speak when a voice vote is called for. The budget will be considered department by department. Motions to adopt a department budget will be in order. Except for those filed with the town clerk at least 7 days before this meeting, motions to add a line item to the budget will not be in order, and I will note that there have been no such requests. Motions to amend the department budget by a specific amount, either an increase or a decrease, will be in order. Amendments to a motion, if any, must be decided before the vote on the main motion can take place. Voters may address questions only to the moderator using the microphone in the center aisle. Please identify yourself, name and address when you begin speaking. No voter may speak a second time until all those wishing to speak have done so. Motions to move a question will be in order only if the moderator determines there has been sufficient discussion, sufficient opportunity for discussion. Voting will be by voice, standing vote, or machine ballot at the moderator's discretion. For a motion to prevail, a majority, more than half of the voters present, must cast their vote in the affirmative, and there are 2 exceptions. Motions to move a question require an affirmative vote by 2/3 of you. A machine ballot may be compelled by an affirmative vote of 1/5 of those present. Such a motion will be in order when the period for discussion is closed by the moderator. In all cases, a failure to vote is the same as a no vote. And I want to remind all of you that if we do go to a machine ballot for any reason, the ballot that you receive has 2 answers on it, yes and no. So you may vote no by going to the voting machine, or you may vote no by staying in your seat. It's your choice, okay? Is everybody clear on that? Any questions? Okay. Political rhetoric, innuendo, and personal attacks not allowed. Anybody speaking speaks only to the question before the meeting, the motion on the floor. I'd like to invite anyone from the town council who wishes to make comments on the budgets to do so. Mr. Lewis.
Hello, can you hear me? Good evening. Thank you all for coming out this evening. I'm going to give you some comments basically on the budget. I'm going to be going through the document that has the covered bridge on the front. I'm not going to go through the whole document. I'm just going to highlight it. Most of it's there. Feel free to ask questions on anything. At the end of the meeting this evening, we'll be discussing some resolutions on tax ordinances. We're going to discuss those later. We're not going to do that at this point, so I'll address those when we get to that portion of the meeting. So on the first page, it's just noted that the budget, as proposed to you this evening, is an increase of 3.4%. The state maximum is 4%. Our increase is 3.4%. A large chunk of it is due to the $175,000 payback to the Providence Water Board, which was approved last year as part of a 10-year payback deal. Excluding that from the tax increase, the budget is only going up about 2.2%. On page 2 of that document, you can see a pie chart that we put together. The pie chart indicates the amount of change in the various departments. So this essentially breaks up just what the increase is. It's not the whole budget, that's on a subsequent pie chart. This one is just the increase. So of the increase, you can see that 35% of the tax increase this evening is due to the Providence Water Supply Board settlement that was approved last year at the financial town meeting. 28% of the increase is due to increases in education, and I'll speak to that momentarily. 25% public safety, that's police, fire, ambulance, all of those things. There was a negative 6%, a decrease in the legislative legal, which is things like the town clerk's office, things that go on in town hall. And up at the top, there are a few little slivers. Capital is 2%. The other includes finance, tax assessor, human services, recreation, charitable contributions, all of those. And the public works is 3% of the increase, and that's due to, that's the public works department, snow plowing, road grading, and trash pickup. So you can see where most of the increases are. I'll address the school quickly. The school committee has asked not to talk about their budget in any length this evening. I'll make a few comments. If there are questions about the school budget when we get there, I'm going to defer to either the school committee members or the superintendent to answer those questions. At the Payne School, they requested level funding. The town council, in conjunction and in agreement with the school committee, decided to lower that 1% cut to the Payne School budget. And that was primarily due to a decrease in the student population. So they felt, and we felt, and they felt that they could handle and support a 1% increase in their budget. Decrease, I'm sorry. Payne School, 1% decrease. At the Foster Gloucester region, this is the second bullet, I'm on page 3, they only increased 106,000, and we really don't have any latitude to do anything about this, but it is a significant portion of our increase because of a student population shift that's happened over the past couple of years. So even if their budget only goes up a little bit, if there's a greater number of students from our town as opposed to from Gloucester, then the weight that we have to pay towards the overall budget is higher. So the increase due to the region is 171,009, so 172,000. On page 4, you can see the overall pie chart that indicates the expenditures across the entire budget. So in our budget, which our bottom line is roughly $13 million, 63% of it goes towards education at the region and at the Payne School. The other 33% is divided up amongst all of the other town services. So you can see legislative legal, as I said, that's town hall, building and zoning, planning is 4%, public safety, police, fire, ambulance, 14%, long-term obligations, that's Providence Water Board, public works, 9%, you can see the rest. The majority is the education budget. On page 5, the bullet at the top just indicates that throughout the document, we've proposed between a 2 and 3% increase for most of the town employees. Some are 2, some are 3. In general, that's where they are. We're assuming a 3% increase in the medical insurance, 10% increase in dental. That's what our providers have indicated is very likely, and that's what's reflected in the document. Retirement costs have decreased, and that's reflected here as well. The various departments, if you look at the various departments of the town, most of them either have a decrease or a very small increase, with 1 or 2 exceptions. So without belaboring it, the legislative and legal is decreased by 2.7%. The planning department is down by 29% due to completion of a comprehensive plan. Building and zoning is up 1.6%. Tax assessor is down 4.6%. The Department 16, which is general administrative functions that don't fit cleanly into any particular department, is up 2.3%. And what some of those things are is the contingency fund, the fund that we use to prepare for unanticipated expenses, a roof collapse, a chimney gets clogged, something like that. The cemetery fund, where we maintain the historical cemeteries, those are the types of things that are in that. The police department of all of the town departments has the largest increase. It's approximately 9%, and that's due to wage increases, step increases that are all contractual. Fire companies and ambulance, about 1%, DPW, 0.7%, libraries, level funded. So there's actually very little in the town side of the budget that has gone up significantly, other than, I said, the police, the school, Providence Water Supply Board, that's essentially it. On page 9, you can see a chart, a bar graph that shows the activity in the capital fund over the previous approximately 10 years. As we purchase large things like fire trucks and ambulances, that takes a toll against the capital fund, and it decreases the balance quite significantly. Fire trucks are $350,000 to $400,000 a piece. So what the town charter calls for is a 2% contribution mandatory to the capital fund each year. Based upon the budget we set, there's an automatic 2% set aside that goes into that fund. The council has appropriated an additional $175,000 on top of the 2% to try to maintain the long-term sustainability of that fund. Last year, we put in an additional 173. This year, we rounded it off to 175, sort of maintain that additional flow. I will talk about all of the individual things that are called out in our capital plan. I think when we get to that budget, because that's down the road, and I don't want to fill your head with a lot of peripheral things at this point. But when we get there, we'll go through each of those capital expenditures individually. So based upon this particular proposal that's in front of you this evening, the current real estate tax is $21.42 per thousand. The new real estate tax, if everything passes as proposed, is $22.53 per thousand. It's approximately a little more than $1. So I'll be happy to answer any questions on each and every department as we go through. Feel free, if you want to recognize me, I'll answer to the best of my ability, or someone else from the council will, or school committee, whatever it is that comes up. And I will turn this back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Just a couple more comments as we go through the meeting. If a motion is made and we're getting ready to vote and you don't know what you're voting on, you don't understand it, please feel free to just jump up and say question or point of order. I'll do my best to recognize you. I want everybody to know what they're voting on. Sometimes it gets a little confusing if you're not used to these things when you get into amendments and so forth. So don't be bashful. Not everybody knows the process well, and there's no harm in asking questions. And again, I'm going to repeat, if we go to a machine ballot, there's two ways to vote no. Stay in your seat or go to the machine and vote no. If you don't want people to know how you're voting, go to the machine and make your ballot, okay? Last thing, we typically, and we may or may not need it tonight, have a quick recess when we're done considering all the line items and the departments in the budget. That to calculate what our capital transfer amount would be. If there are no changes to the budget, we may not need that recess, but the point of this is, don't leave when we're done considering the department budgets, please, because there are 8 resolutions. These are the places where you vote to actually let the town council raise taxes and take your money, and do some other things with funds within the town. So you should stay for those. And then there are 2 resolutions regarding the tax stabilization ordinance and the tax freeze ordinance. That will be the last 2 things on the agenda this evening. And I want you to stay for them if there's any way that you can. I'll do my best to get through the meeting quickly so that being able to be here for those resolutions is possible. But we will entertain questions. Please keep your questions directed to the motion on the floor. So we're ready to go. The first department budget is the legislative, legal, and general for a requested amount or adopted amount by the council of $332,493. Could I have a motion for that amount, please? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? There being no discussion, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Planning Department, in the amount of $53,700. Is there a motion for that amount? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the Planning Department budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Building and zoning, in the amount of $55,541. Motion for that amount, please? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the planning department, the building and zoning budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Finance Department, in the amount of $206,743. A motion for that amount would be in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the Finance Department budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Assessor's budget, in the amount of $71,671. A motion for that would be in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the assessor's budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. You may get your wish, Bill. The general administration budget, the amount of $280,850. A motion for that amount, please. A second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the general administration budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Human Services budget, the amount of $24,938. A motion for that amount, please. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on Human Services budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Community funding, in the amount of $18,083. Motion for that amount, please. A second.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the community funding budget? John?
What is Gateway?
Mr. Lewis? The question was, what is the gateway line item?
Gateway provides services to residents of the town. Mental health services is one. Counseling, people who would come into human services with a family issue, they provide free of charge counseling to people in the town. So the records that the Human Services Director has kept show that we receive far more in services from them than the cost that we pay for. That's why we continue to propose that that's funded.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. So a motion is on the floor for community funding budget of $18,083. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor of the amount of $18,083 indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Refuse removal, in the amount of $296,396. A motion for that amount is in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the refuse removal budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Police Department budget in the amount of $1,438,879. A motion, please. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the Police Department budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Animal control budget, the amount of $37,376. Motion for that would be in order. A second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the animal control budget? There being none, those in favor of that amount indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Other public safety, in the amount of $306,375. Motion would be in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the other public safety budget? There being none, those in favor of that amount indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Public Works Department, in the amount of $884,846. A motion for that amount is in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the Public Works Department budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Conservation Commission, in the amount of $1,425. A motion is in order for that amount. And a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the Conservation Commission budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. The Land Trust, in the amount of $2,655. Motion is in order for that amount. And a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the Land Trust budget? There being none, those in favor of the amount indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. carries. Libraries, the amount of $150,842. The motion for that amount is in order. A second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the library budget? There being none, those in favor so indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Recreation budget in the amount of $25,800. A motion for that amount is in order. Second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the recreation department budget? There being none, those in favor of that budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Long-term debt and obligations in the amount of $175,000. The motion for that amount is in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the long-term debt and obligation
I would
budget?
like to discuss this.
Step to the microphone, please.
My name is,
Got to turn it on.
Hello. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Bob, and I've been here since probably my second town meeting. But I came to the first one because of the police department budget thing, and I found out about this when I thought I might participate. But as the first of the year, I was concerned about the septic system, the sunsetting of the cesspool issue in Rhode Island. As of the first of the year, if you have a cesspool and you're trying to sell your house, you have to have that fixed within 12 months of the sale. The issue is specifically, I don't know where in the budget it fits, but I had some conversation with Kelly today and with Denise about where to put an allowance for the participation of the town in very low interest money, 1%, to help the people in the town if they need.
So, Mr. Schmidt, let me explain kind of how it works in the rules of this meeting. You're not addressing something that is germane to the long-term debt and obligation budget, which
I believe it is, that's why I'm bringing it up at this particular time.
I'll give you just a moment to make that point, but I will remind you that you cannot add a line item to this budget tonight.
I don't think this is a line item according to the advice I've been given, but I'm not
Go ahead.
a finance person.
I'll give you a little latitude.
Okay, this is specifically that the arrangement between the state of Rhode Island and this Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank is the town has to cooperate with the lending agency to allow its citizens to avail themselves of this low-interest money. So it's been available for years. I know about it because I work at the DEM. I'm not representing the DEM, but many years ago, 20 years ago, I did research into it.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Schmidt, but the place for this conversation is in a budget workshop with the town council. It is not going to be germane to this motion here tonight.
Well, the $300,000 placeholder.
See, it is not something, you cannot change the line items, you cannot add a line item or take away a line item in this budget tonight, and it is not part of what you're talking about, is likely not part of this budget anyway, this particular motion. So your conversation is now out of order, I'm sorry.
Well, please contact your town council about this issue that I've been trying to work with them on.
Okay, we still have a motion on the floor for long-term debt and obligations budget in the amount of $175,000. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question.
Please step to the microphone.
Thanks for the opportunity.
I got to turn that on.
Thanks for the opportunity. Can you hear me?
Yep, that's fine. Identify yourself, please.
John Motshaw, 8 Pierce Road. I just had a question on the line item, the police department, the $30,000.
Hold on just a second, sir. We're voting on the long-term debt and obligation budget.
Yeah, that's in there.
Planning, police
Oh, okay,
station.
I'm sorry. I didn't understand.
Sorry about
Please
that.
proceed.
More for a new police department. I would hate to have the previous ordinance there fall down on top of them. However, I thought we had a board that was put together to identify a location for it, maybe the size, whether it's going to be consolidated into the town hall. I'm just wondering what the $30,000 at this point in time is being used for.
I think your question's a good one. I'll recognize Mr. Lewis to answer it, and John, it might be an appropriate time to kind of explain both of those line items.
The front and
Yeah,
supply?
no, the funding for this that we're going to vote on later.
Okay, Mr. Macho, you are correct. We did just recently put together a 7-member committee to look into planning for a new police station. I don't know if anyone, you've driven by the police station, you see we have a 19th century building in which a 21st century police station is, police department is operating. The building is old, it's failing, it just doesn't have the electrical capacity, the communications capacity, the space, ADA compliance, it doesn't have any of those things. It has to be either upgraded or replaced. And we put the committee together to come up with proposals to do that. So they will be looking into some of the things that you've said. Should there be an addition put onto Town Hall? Should there be a freestanding police station built right near the Town Hall or in another place? Should the existing building be renovated? In order to get estimates, architectural estimates and architectural plans to come up with a reasonable proposal to go forward, you need to pay the architect. So we've asked for $30,000 essentially as seed money for the committee so that they can actually hire the architects, hire the engineers to put together reasonable plans. So once we know what it's going to cost, then we could come back to a financial town meeting in the future to say, okay, this is what they've looked at, these are actual plans put together by engineers, it's going to cost X number of dollars for option A, X number of dollars for option B, and we have a way to go forward.
I see. So this isn't actually being spent at this time, this is put aside so that in the event they need to contract someone for expertise, where to go to the next step, this isn't actually being set forth for like plans or something like that.
I expect that it will be expended within this next year, probably within the next 6 months, because we really can't go forward in any direction until we have all of the options laid out in front of us. Now, what Mr. Boyden referred to, where is this money coming from? The proposal from the council is that this $30,000 is not going to be raised through taxes. This $30,000 is going to come from the Foster Reserve Fund. So we have a legally mandated reserve. Towns are supposed to have 10% of their operating budget set aside in case of a grave emergency. And we have that. We're at the 10% mark. Once you're at the 10% mark, then you can go ahead and expend that money for certain projects, but only with the consent of the financial town meeting. The town council can't take money out of that reserve fund and spend it. So what we're asking for is for this meeting to authorize us to appropriate $30,000 from the Foster Reserve Fund as seed money to get the police station building committee started moving forward with a plan. And that doesn't affect the tax rate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Is there any further discussion on the long-term debt and obligations budget? Mr. Schmidt?
Mr. Lewis, I appreciate the argument that you made for that point, but the same planning type of point is what needs to be done for the septic system community program. And it doesn't need discussion, there's no funds to be spent on it,
I'm sorry.
but you're not listening.
Is there any further discussion?
I can add one factual point as a solicitor. I owe a phone call to the state fire marshal. I promised him that I would call a day or two after this meeting. If we do not show some real movement, like this money being put aside and/or spent going towards a new police station, they have issued almost an inch thick report of violations in that fire station and the police station that they will shut it down. Then we will be in an emergency status, and I think the cost will be a great deal worse to everyone in the town. So, that's a fact.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Yes, sir.
My name's William Kenny, Old Plainfield Park, and just curious, you had a 7-member committee. Was any of the results, the recommendations from this committee, was any of it made public?
I believe the committee was just formed.
Just formed last Thursday, there are no recommendations yet, they haven't met together yet.
Is there any possibility of putting this funding aside until we have some recommendations from that committee before we just put $30,000 out there?
Mr. Lewis?
I believe that we need the money in order for them to generate reasonable recommendations. In order to hire an architect, I don't think that the architects are going to come do the work for free and draw the plans, draw up the plans.
I
So
wouldn't expect them to, but I would expect the committee to give the architects an idea of what direction they want to go in before they start doing investigations on it. That's my only. I think you would have to have some results from the committee, make it public, and then say, hey, we have options 3, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, and now we're going to hire some architects and get some figures in before we go spending any money. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any further discussion on the long-term debt and obligation budget? There being none, the motion is for $175,000. Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. Capital budget in the amount of $461,743. A motion for that amount is in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the capital budget? I see a question.
My name is Sarah Sukar. I live on East Kennedy Road. Can you just give us an idea of what the $145,000 increase in the Payne School budget is for?
Mr. Lewis?
So I didn't actually go through this by line item. I'll do that. I'll do it in its entirety so that everyone is aware. The $6,000 in the finance department is a set aside towards a new server for the town hall. It's a partial payment towards a $25,000, $26,000 server. $43,865 for the police. That's leases on the police vehicles. $180,000 Public Works Highway. That's for paving throughout the town, various roads. $24,200 Public Works equipment. That's for two different things, a paving box to attach to one of our trucks that will allow our DPW workers to do small paving projects, driveways and repairs and things like that. That's about $12,000 of that, and then the other $12,000 of that is to paint, sandblast, and refinish 3 of the DPW vehicles so we extend their lives. The Public Works Bridges, 32,178, is for a head wall on the Anthony Road Bridge. You might have noticed last year we did some work on that. We put the new under the road pipe, but we have to do the head walls.
Johnson.
I'm so sorry, Johnson. And the $175,000 for Payne School, that's for primarily a new heating system and ADA compliance. And it's actually about twice that cost. The Payne School is covering from its own funds the other half. So we're appropriating half on the town side, and they have some money set aside, approximately another $175,000. So it's a heating system, renovations to the areas where they pulled out the old system and have to replace it, and ADA compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Thank you for the question. We have before us a motion for $461,743 in capital. Is there any further discussion? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion carries. The capital transfer budget, we're voting on this at a 2% figure, which is unchanged because we have not changed the proposed budget. We're voting on this because the request for an additional $175,000 transfer. So we have a total capital of $422,997. Is there a motion for that amount? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the capital transfer budget? There being none, those in favor of the budget indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Payne School budget, the amount of $3,211,819. A motion for that amount is in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the Payne School budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. That concludes our work on the expenditures in the budget. And Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a motion, we have resolutions already with the correct amounts here, right? Okay, good to go. So now comes the hard part of the meeting, where you have to listen to me talk for a few minutes. I apologize for that. Each of the resolutions I'm going to read, you will then get a chance, just as you have with the budget line items, to discuss and vote on them. Most of them are fairly routine, but questions will be in order after I read each one of the 8 resolutions that we have to do. First one is the Capital Project Fund Transfer Resolution. Resolved that it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and hereby is authorized and directed to transfer to the general fund $461,743 from the Capital Projects Fund for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017, for the purchase and improvements set forth in the capital program. The motion for that amount is in order. Okay. Is there discussion on the Capital Project Fund Transfer Resolution? I'm sorry, I didn't call for a second. Thank you. Motion and a second on the Capital Project Fund Transfer Resolution. Is there any discussion? There being none, those in favor of this resolution so indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Land Trust Fund Transfer Resolution. Resolved that it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and hereby is authorized and directed to transfer to the general fund an amount not to exceed $2,655 from the Land Trust Fund for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 for the operating, administrative expenses of the Foster Land Trust per the amendment to Article 10, Section 10.17 of the Foster Home Rule Charter. Is there a motion in support of this resolution? Is there a second? Second. Motion is second. Is there discussion? Mrs. Lewis.
I think you read 2016.
I did. That is a misprint. Thank you for the correction. So I'll read it just briefly again, so that it's read properly into the record. Resolved that it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and hereby is authorized and directed to transfer to the general fund an amount not to exceed $2,655 from the Land Trust Fund for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017 for the operating and administrative expenses of the Foster Land Trust per the amendment to Article 10, Section 10.17 of the Foster Home Rule Charter. A motion in support of this corrected resolution is in order. Yes?
Shouldn't that be an amendment to the motion that's already on the floor?
I'm going to hear it as a correction to the motion. I think the result is the same, but thank you for bringing it
There's already a
up.
motion on the floor, so you don't amend the motion on the floor, otherwise we have to retract the motion.
I move to retract the motion made.
Okay.
Second.
We have an amendment to the motion to remove it. It's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on the amendment? Those in favor of the amendment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay, so the motion is removed. I guess I better read it again. Get it all just right. Resolved, and it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and hereby is authorized and directed to transfer to the general fund an amount not to exceed $2,655 from the land trust fund for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017 for the operating and administrative expenditures of the Foster Land Trust per the amendment to Article 10, Section 10.17 of the Foster Home Rule Charter. Is there a motion for this resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? There being none, those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Thank you for your patience. Motion passes. Property Valuations Reserve Resolution. It is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and hereby is authorized and directed to reserve and commit unexpended funds appropriated for property valuations for the sole purpose of funding property valuations in future years. Is there a motion for this resolution? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the resolution? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion carries. Tax Anticipation Notes Resolution. Resolved, and it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and is hereby authorized and directed to borrow any necessary amounts of money from time to time during the current year for the proper and appropriate transaction of the town's business in anticipation of taxes to be assessed as of December 31st, 2015, and any note or notes that may be issued under this authority shall be paid not later than 1 year from their date. Is there a motion to support this resolution? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the tax anticipation notes resolution? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. This is the long one. Tax resolution. Resolved, and it is hereby voted that the electors of the town of Foster qualified to vote on any proposition to impose a tax for the expenditure of money in the town meeting legally assembled on the 3rd day of May 2016, hereby order the levy and collection of a tax on the rateable property of said town of Foster in a sum not less than $12,600,000 nor more than $12,676,011. Said tax for ordinary expenses and charges and for the payment of interest and indebtedness in whole or in part of said town of Foster and for other purposes authorized by law. Tax assessor shall apportion said levy on assessed valuations on the inhabitants and rateable property of said town of Foster as of the 31st day of December 2015 at 12 o'clock midnight, said date being known as the date of assessment of town valuations. The tax assessor shall, on completion of said apportionment, date, certify, and sign the same, and deliver to and deposit the same in the office of the town clerk. The town clerk, on receipt of same, shall forthwith make a copy of same and deliver it to the town treasurer, who shall issue and affix to said copy a warrant under her hand, directed to the collector of taxes of said town of Foster, commanding her to proceed and collect said taxes of the persons and estates liable therefor. Said taxes assessed and apportioned on the 31st day of December 2015 shall be due and payable on the 15th day of July 2016. All taxes remaining unpaid on the first day of August 2016 shall carry until collected a penalty at the rate of 12% per year upon such unpaid taxes. Said taxes may be paid in 4 quarterly installments. First installment of 25% on or before the 15th day of July 2016. And remaining installments as follows: 25% on or before the 15th day of October 2016, 25% on or before the 15th day of January 2017, and the last 25% on or before the 15th day of April 2017. In the event that the remaining tax or any subsequent installment is not paid when due, then the whole tax or any remaining unpaid balance then become due and payable immediately and shall bear interest at the rate of 12% per year. Interest will be charged on all late payments in their entirety and shall not be calculated on a limited per diem basis. All taxes not paid on or before the first day of January 2017 for the levy on assessed valuations as of the 31st day of December 2014 shall be collected by the said tax collector according to law. In the event that payment is made by check and the check is for any reason dishonored or refused payment by the bank on which it is drawn, the collector shall add a bad check charge in the amount of $30 to the taxpayer's account. Town Council of Foster hereby authorizes the sale of tax liens in bulk to Rhode Island Housing and Mortgage Finance Corporation in accordance with RI General Laws 44-517 sub B. Is there a motion in support of this resolution? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion?
Could you read that again? No.
If you'd like it read again, I would invite you to read
That's
it,
okay.
so they can throw things at you. Okay. There being no further discussion, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion carries. Use of Foster Reserves Resolution. It is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and hereby is authorized and directed to immediately make available $30,000 from the Foster Reserve Funds for the sole purpose of funding preliminary expenses for the renovation, addition, or replacement of the police station. Should the project be approved at subsequent financial town meeting, these costs will be reimbursed from the approved long-term budget debt obligation and obtained to the fund project. The funds will become available on July 1st, 2016. Is there a motion in support of this resolution? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on this resolution?
I have.
Yes, sir. Please step to the microphone.
John Marshall, Pierce Road. Who's going to monitor the expenditures of that $30,000, wherever that is placed?
Expenditures that go out of town funds are monitored by the town council on warrants at each of their meetings.
I'm all for the new police department. I think we need one. The one that we have is older than all of us in the room put together. The committee that's following this, is there any? Hello?
That's good.
Sorry. Is there anyone, any way we can follow along with this and see where expenditures are going? It just seems that the new police department, which we need, is going to be very costly. It'd be nice for the town residents to be able to follow and see the updates of what's going on.
I agree with you completely. I would encourage you to attend town council meetings.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good point. The committee meetings, whenever they're held, will be public meetings posted just like a town council meeting, and available for you to attend as well.
Thank you.
You bet. Any other discussion on the Foster Reserves Resolution? There being none, those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Give me just a moment to take a notice of the water. Okay. We have two more resolutions. The first one involving exemption of stabilization of taxes used for manufacturing commercial purposes. I'll read the resolution to you. Resolved, and it is hereby voted that the electors of the town of Foster qualified to vote on any proposition to impose a tax for the expenditure of money in a town meeting legally assembled on the 3rd day of May 2016 pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 4439. Hereby authorize the town council for the town of Foster to exempt from payment in whole or in part real and personal property which is undergoing environmental remediation or is used for manufacturing or commercial purposes to determine a stabilized amount of taxes to be paid on the property notwithstanding the evaluation of the property or the tax rate in accordance with and subject to the terms and conditions set forth in Rhode Island General Laws 4439, and that's certain ordinance providing for the exemption or stabilizing of taxes on property used for manufacturing or commercial purposes approved by the town council April 28, 2016, after a public meeting held for the town of Foster. Mr. Chippendale, did you wish to speak? You're looking like you wanted to.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Should I address both of the resolutions?
Well, we don't have a motion on the floor. If this is a point of order, yes.
This is a point of order.
Okay.
I've reviewed both of these, both of the resolutions, which are the product of recently
So
passed.
to be clear, you're also referring them to the next resolution, which is the tax relief for foster elderly and disabled persons.
Yes, sir,
Okay.
both of those items.
Mr. Moderator, point of order, we don't know what the second one is until you read it. So I'd like
Right,
to,
so this is a point of order, it's not a motion.
but he's going to address things.
There's no motion on the floor, so I'll entertain what Mr. Chippendale has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator, based on the fact that these have been approved at a council meeting this past Thursday, I'm concerned that there has not been an appropriate amount of time allowed for
An appropriate amount of time allowed for the people
Please step
of
over and
Foster.
use, please step over and use a working mic, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Here we go, be in the right spots, like I am. These were heard last Thursday, the 28th. Folks in town who may have been interested in understanding these by asking questions of our town officials, going into town hall, getting data, to review those data. Folks who have heard and seen over the past several years various iterations of one of these resolutions. These folks have not had an opportunity to understand. I've received countless phone calls from members of this community that they just don't understand, specifically the elderly tax freeze resolution. Friday, the town hall is closed. It was passed on Thursday night. Saturday, town hall's closed. Sunday, town hall's closed. Monday and today, the town hall was open. There was 2 days for folks who wanted information from our town to help try to understand what these ordinances represented by these resolutions will do, had no opportunity to do so. There's so much confusion about what they do. I've even been corrected by 2 learned members of our council that I don't understand what they do. And I'm willing to accept that because it's changed so many times. In fact, the version of the elderly tax freeze was changed last Thursday. Folks have not had enough time. Furthermore, there were, in my opinion, there were inconsistencies in the advertisement of these issues. For example, from one of our periodicals, it simply says, other issues possibly impacting the budget will be proposed. There's not an adequate explanation to the people so that they can understand, come here, learn. Furthermore, we're asking, there's maybe 150 people in this room. That's about 3% of the electorate of the town of Foster. We're asking 3% of the electorate to make a decision on an issue that will impact one way or the other. And it doesn't matter where you stand on this issue. It's not about the merit of the resolutions. It is about the timing and the lack of ability of the people of this town to get an understanding of precisely what they do. There have been so many different iterations. I can tell you this, when things are rushed in the General Assembly, my antenna go up because usually there's something that's not going to come out of them that's very good. So I have just an inherited concern. Furthermore, this wasn't even posted on the Secretary of State's website, which I know is not a legal requirement, but it's something that folks are very much used to having that resource to check. I think this needs time and an ability for the majority of our citizens to have time to understand them and then properly vote on them so that we can act in a fiscally responsible manner for the town and the people of this town. And therefore, I move to table both of those resolutions until the next financial town meeting, which will either be in the fall or next year.
Couple things, okay, there is a motion. I'll take a second on the motion. Second, okay. Before we proceed with any discussion, in order for this motion to be correct and meaningful, I need to read the second resolution to you. Okay? Let me do that, and then I'll entertain discussion.
Mr. Boyd, may I have a point of order?
You may.
Thank you. Realizing, well, is this one working or not?
Good, you're good.
Realizing that you called for a motion after reading every resolution and didn't call for a motion after that resolution that you read, a point of order was brought up. Speaking only to the first resolution, under your council, back in the 90s, there was a request, unofficial, for Staples to build a warehouse in Foster. There were also requests for BJ's and Target to build warehouses in Foster. There was another warehouse that wanted to build warehouses in Foster. This is a financial meeting of the citizens concerned about their taxes. The only way we will ever get tax relief is to produce a new revenue source. All right, we must, at some point, the planning board has built, what are we calling them, please, the planning board member? General business mixed-use places, okay? Mr. Restivo has built a resolution to encourage people to come to this community to help to support your taxes.
Okay,
So I think at this
Now you're
point,
speaking in support of a resolution.
okay, so at this point, the motion to table both items is incorrect. This is one, the town financial meeting, the people here concerned about their taxes should have the right to vote for it. And it is not recently Thursday night. From 1992, you were on the council, and we knew that we had requests for warehouses at that time. So it's a little more than recent Thursday night. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to table both resolutions.
Point of order?
Before we go to another point of order, I'm going to read the other resolution so that we all have the information in front of us, okay? And then I'll entertain your point of order, Mr. Bryan. Resolved that it is hereby voted that the electors of the town of Foster qualified to vote on any proposition to impose a tax for the expenditure of money in a town meeting legally assembled on the 3rd day of May 2016, hereby order and authorize the town council to enact a moratorium on accepting any new applications for tax relief under that certain ordinance, providing tax relief for elderly and totally disabled persons accepted by the qualified electors of the town of Foster at the annual financial town meeting held on March 25th, 1974, and hereby authorize, accept, and approve that certain ordinance providing tax relief for elderly and disabled persons approved by the town council of Foster at a meeting held April 28, 2016. Mrs. Ryder, you have the floor.
As it pains me to say this, I think Mr. Savazio was right. When you read the first resolution, you did not call for a motion or a second. Then Mr. Chippendale got up and made an amendment to a motion that was never made.
Can't make an amendment to a motion that isn't made.
Right?
So he didn't make an amendment to a motion, he made a
You made
motion.
a point of order.
He made a point of order, but then how could he make a motion to table
He asked-
something that hadn't
He asked to make a
been?
motion, and I allowed it.
Okay.
Need a new moderator.
Okay. There is a motion on the floor to table both of these resolutions to a future financial town meeting. Sir?
I think we're putting the court,
Identify yourself, please.
the card here.
Identify yourself, please.
If we vote
Bob Soilsbury.
if we don't vote to approve the second thing we have here, this will mean we have no, if we vote to disapprove this second one, this first one will mean we no longer have the one from 1974. We're open for anything.
I have discussion.
Mr. Lewis?
So, Mr. Salisbury, let me alleviate your fears with regards to the senior tax freeze. The existing senior tax freeze stays in place. If we take no action on this evening, it stays in place. So that's not a fear. That's not a fear. If it's tabled, everything stays in place. So I don't want you to go home thinking, we didn't take any action and people lost their tax freeze. I would like to speak, however, to the fact that we're putting these two things together in the same package. Now, one of the things that the council is required to do is be responsible. We tried to be very responsible with putting forward the budget this evening. We held the line on a lot of different departments. That's the expenditures. The other part of the budget is the revenues, and we have to pay attention to those as well. So we have two different resolutions that we've put in front of you, which, by the way, were appropriately advertised. They were at a public hearing. They were advertised 3 weeks in a row in the Observer. They were on the town website. There was a public hearing to which everyone was invited. I disagree with Mr. Chippendale that there wasn't adequate time. 3 weeks in the Observer, and I'm not sure when the last time the General Assembly ever did anything quickly. These two different ordinances, these resolutions for ordinances, deal with drastically different things. And I know that many folks are here this evening to talk about the tax relief for the elderly and the disabled. And I'm glad you're all here. I'm glad you are all here. If there were more people here, that would be even better, because we need to talk about this. The first one is about promoting some small businesses in town, and by giving them a tax break. And if we can promote small businesses in town by giving them a tax break, we actually expand our local tax base. And by expanding our local tax base, each of you will have less impact on your own pocket at the next financial town meeting, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So the more we put this off, the more we are essentially turning our nose up at small businesses. We're trying to promote environmental reclamation, you heard him mention that, environmental remediation, manufacturing or commercial purposes, and this is designed to encourage and support new small businesses in order to expand the tax base. We do this by giving a tax break up front and then phasing it out slowly over between 5 and 13 years, depending on the size of the project. This really is a no-brainer. This is going to save every single person in this room dollars and cents next year. As soon as the first business opens up, we're going to save money here. I don't want to see these two things tied together. There's a lot more conversation that I think we should have about the senior tax freeze. And we're all in the room. Why shouldn't we have that this evening? Why should we put this off for a year? So what I would request is we defeat this motion to table. We deal with these things individually. Let's talk about the one that gives the tax break to the businesses that's going to have direct benefit to each of our pockets. We'll talk about that, up or down. Then subsequently, we can talk about the senior tax freeze, up or down. Now, the town council only makes proposals. We can't enact these things. We propose them to the financial town meeting, and then they have to go up to the State House for the State House to enact anything with regard to taxation of individuals. I think if we throw them all in the same basket, we're doing all of ourselves a disservice, and you're putting off your potential savings another year. Thank you.
Mr. Bergstrom.
Yes. I should know how to do that. No, Eric Bergstrom, Tuckahoe Road. I've been here since 1950, and what this seems like is a confusion between one item and another. And I just can't understand how you can make this confusion. Are you going to oppose the tax freeze in the town of Forster after the age of 65, or aren't you? You've combined all these other things to make a state of confusion for the entire town, right? I'm sorry. It's what it is. It's what it says. I'm reading it right here. It's ludicrous. I'm sorry. I've been here. I came to this school the first year it was open, in 1955. And I went all the way through the high school. My parents have paid taxes. Everybody in my family has paid taxes. They still do to this day. This proposition is an insult to my intelligence. Sorry.
Further discussion, Ms. Ryder?
I believe what Mr. Lewis was getting at is that these things are this far apart. The stabilization has zero to do with the elderly tax freeze. Nothing, nada, shouldn't even be in the same sentence. If you look on the second, I don't know if it's the second or third sheet on the stabilization, well, maybe the fourth, you will see, page 5, the exemptions that will be given to small businesses. And I don't think that exemptions to promote small business is a bad thing. It has nothing to do with the elderly tax freeze. Is there, and I'm going to ask the moderator, how do I undo?
Well, here's the thing. I know where you're going, Mrs. Ryan, and I understand that there's a little confusion about these two different resolutions because we put something up about both of them in one motion. So let me see if I can clarify. And the discussion that you're starting is probably not appropriate because this motion is not about the contents of either ordinance or either resolution. The motion that we have is a procedural motion to table them.
All right, then I would just encourage people to vote this motion down to table both of them.
Okay, that's fine. So, to clarify, the motion that we're discussing, again, is not about the content or the adoption of either one of these resolutions, which are two completely separate things, right? They just happen to have come before us at the same time, with the same schedule and the same time frame and process through the town council's hearing process. So, any further discussion should be about whether or not we should table these motions tonight. Okay? Mr. Lewis, I believe you had your hand up just a minute ago.
I just want to thank Mr. Bergstrom for his comments. They are two entirely different things. I would like to really reiterate, vote this down. Let's talk about the business tax credits separately. Let's give that air and give that its due diligence and its due consideration. Then we can talk about the senior tax freeze. I'll address all of your questions. If they're not to anyone's liking, then the meeting votes it down. We're just making a proposal based upon the advice that we've received, upon the fiscal analysis that we've received. These are two entirely different things. By voting this down, it doesn't enact either one. It allows us to consider the business separately from the seniors, so we can give each of them their due.
Mr. Chippendale.
Would it be appropriate, Mr. Moderator, if I severed the two?
If you would like to withdraw your motion and make a separate motion, I'll entertain
I'll
that.
withdraw my motion that I made, and I move to table just the senior tax freeze resolution until the next town financial meeting, which may be in the fall, as we have pending issues that may bring us here, or it may be in the spring.
Okay, and I would like to remind everybody, is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, I'd like to remind everybody in the room that there are two ways that a financial town meeting can be called. 10% of the voters can sign a petition to hold one, or the town council can vote to hold one. So that plus the regularly scheduled one that you're now attending, there's three different ways a financial town meeting can happen in Foster. So we have a motion on the floor now to table the resolution on the elderly tax freeze to a future financial town meeting. Is there discussion on that motion? Mr. Lewis.
So I understand that people may not want to vote this evening, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with having it tabled after the conversation. We're all in the room together. People are saying, Mr. Chippendale said, we don't understand it. We want to understand it. Well, here's the whole council sitting here with the information, and our treasurer. We will explain everything that's in there. Table it after that if you like, but at least this way you know what we're thinking and where we're going and what the issues are. It's not going to go forward if this financial town meeting doesn't want it to. But we all need to understand, everyone, the council, all of the people that live in the town, whether you're on the freeze or you're not on the freeze, whether you'll be on the freeze next year or in 10 years, we all need to understand what the impact is. So since we're all here together, let's talk about it. Let's not table it until we have all of the information. Then, fine, go ahead and table it if you think I'm fine with it.
Mr. Campbell?
Bruce Campbell, 20 Woods Road. I would like to address Mike's concern about there not being enough time. I was at the hearing for the elderly tax freeze, the new version of the elderly tax freeze. And what is being presented to the town tonight is not what was advertised and not what was brought before the hearing. The ordinance that was brought before the hearing and the ordinance that was advertised was amended at either the hearing or right after the hearing. And so what you see here is an amended version which was never advertised, as far as I know. So it just goes to show how quickly this was pushed along in order to get it into this meeting without really proper consideration.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mr. Chippendale?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I agree with Mr. Lewis that we do want the town to be educated. The council can most probably answer most, if not all, of the questions. Where I disagree is that all people are not here. There are 3,850 people who are not at this meeting. There are 3,850 people not here who are qualified electors in this town who may want to understand it. This can have a dramatic impact on the finances of this town in one direction or the other. And frankly, we don't know. There have been several studies put forward by different people that different results. You think different sets of data using different sets of data. It's extremely confusing. The townspeople are owed the opportunity to learn about this. Not just 150 of them, but 4,000 of them are owed the opportunity to have time to look at this, research it, learn about it, understand it, look at the various studies that have been put together by various people, perhaps do their own. I am concerned that the time which I stand by, the first time this ordinance that's reflected in that resolution was put together was last Thursday night. It was in play for years, and for 3 weeks it was advertised as one thing. What came out of that meeting and what we're voting on tonight is something entirely different. That's 2 business days to digest something that can have a dramatic financial impact on this entire town. We, as policymakers, have a fiduciary responsibility to the people of this town to make sure that we know everything about it and that they know everything about it so that they can properly vote for their own future. Thank you.
Motion to call the question, please.
Okay. A motion to call the question has been made. That is in order.
Second.
I have to look.
That's Ryan, right?
Okay. Is it 20%? It's all right. Okay. I have 2 people whose hands were up before the motion to call the question was made. I'm going to entertain their discussion, and then we'll take a vote on a motion to move the question. Cheryl, you were first.
Cheryl Laws, Cucumber Hill Road, newly elected to town council, and I am glad to be here. At the meeting last week, which was advertised, which told why you should be attending, only about 6 extra people came to that meeting. We had a lengthy discussion, we heard a lot of concerns, and we acted on those concerns, and we included some of those in our revision. We didn't do it lightly, we didn't take it lightly, and I, for one, would never do anything that would hurt the elderly in this town. I worked too hard on the pension, and I know what it did, and I know the results of why that happened. Secondly, we're here tonight, we're here to clear up any misconceptions that have been floating around from different people, different parties, and I'm not pointing any fingers. We're all guilty of it because parts of information have been getting out. Give us a chance to explain it to you, and as Mr. Lewis said, then vote it down if you don't like it. But at least hear the discussion and the reasons. That's all we're asking. We have to make some kind of an improvement and change. And if you think this is, we're playing games with your future or anybody's future, take a look and remember the pension. You don't want that to happen here as a result of inaction. Thank you.
Patty Moreau, tax assessor, Central Pike. I agree with Councilwoman Hawes. Any of the revisions that were made in this ordinance were taken from the recommendations of the taxpayers that did attend this meeting. The council listened to all their questions, took everything under consideration, and that's why there are a few changes in there than what originally was in that ordinance. So it did come from the taxpayers, it did not come from the town council. All of these revisions were recommendations from the people who did attend that meeting and asked that they change certain things in there so that it was more, that they left it more suitable to the elderly.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion to move the question, which means that we'll stop discussion and take a final vote on the motion on the floor. Is there a second to the motion to move the question? There's a second. Those in favor of moving the question, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The motion carries. So the question is moved. There's no further discussion on the motion that Mr. Chippendale made to table the discussion and vote of the elderly tax rates to a future financial town meeting. So those in favor of that motion to table to a future meeting, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
I'm going to ask for a standing vote on this issue. So those in favor of tabling the motion to a future meeting need to stand. Please make it clear to the Board of Canvassers with your right hand that you're wearing the wristband. Could I get a count, please, from the Board of Canvassers of people in the room? 113. 113, thank you. feel free to put your arm down if you can. This is Go ahead and be seated, folks. We have 63 votes cast in the affirmative, so the motion carries. There will be no further discussion on the elderly and disabled tax freeze resolution this evening. It is tabled to a future financial town meeting. That leaves us with the resolution for the stabilization of taxes on property used for manufacturing and commercial purposes. I have a motion to approve that resolution.
Second.
I have a second. I'm going to take my privilege as moderator right now and explain to you why. I believe that without regard to whether I support or oppose either of these resolutions, but specifically this particular one on stabilizing taxes, that there has not been enough time for the people, the general population, to get the information that they need from the final ordinance. It was not part of the warrant for this town meeting, in that it wasn't specified as being on the warrant. It was enacted or adopted by the council 5 days before this meeting, and the warrant went out more than 7 days before this meeting. So no general knowledge of this discussion tonight, which I understand you're all here to have, really is in the community. I'm not at all supporting not discussing this, but I believe the proper place is at a future financial town meeting, which could be any time, okay? So with that in mind, I'm going to declare the motion out of order at this meeting and end discussion on it.
You want a motion to adjourn?
I have a motion to adjourn.
I object.
The declaration has been made.
I still, how do you rule out of order a motion that was made? You allowed Mr. Chippendale's motion to table it. So if you're allowing a motion to table, you would exclude a motion to consider? Mr. Boyden, you addressed every motion this evening in a certain fashion except these. I'm very disappointed in your presentation of this. It's obvious you didn't want these things to get the airing that they needed to do.
I do not want them to get the airing tonight.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I want to thank everybody for listening and voting. Whether you supported these or you were opposed to these, I thank you for your participation.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. Those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.